I try to pick the pieces in my mind, put them in a pretty little line for you to see. I try to get.
Hello everyone, I'm Joe Collins and this is Dear DM, a Dungeons & Dragons advice podcast where each episode I'll be sitting down with a different dungeon master in order to discuss, debate, and hopefully answer your D&D related questions. We're back for round 2, and I just wanted to thank everyone who listened to the pilot episode. Their response has been lovely, and I'm excited to start pumping out more and more episodes. Also, thank you very much to everyone who submitted questions for the episode. If you would like to have one of your questions answered on the show, please submit it to us either by shooting us an email at deardm.submit@gmail.com or send us a tweet at deardmpodcast. Now, this week, I have a very special guest with me to help answer your D&D questions. He's the host and the DM of the Spellcast, a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons actual play podcast. I'm very excited to welcome our Dungeon Master for the evening, Adam Brooks. Thanks for joining me, Adam.
Hello, hey Joe, good to see you, we're miles and miles and miles and miles away, but good to hear you, good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear your dulcet tones over the interwebs.
Please, Joe, you flatter me.
That's going to be the rest of the podcast, is just us flattering each other.
How was your weekend?
It was good, holiday season, very busy, but, you know, it was very productive. How about yours?
Mine was finishing polishing up today's episode, which just dropped. So
oh, sweet!
That was how mine was spent.
Speaking of which, that is an excellent segue, because I was going to say, for those who haven't taken a lesson yet or don't know about it yet, tell us a little bit about the Spellcast, what it's like, what kind of campaign you're running.
We are running a homebrew Forgotten Realms setting because that is the setting that I'm most familiar with, and I wanted to. I liked the mishmash of different aspects of what lore it pulls from around in literature and such, and I wanted to choose that, but I wanted to twist the ancient history of that setting a little bit and make it fit the themes of the campaign that I was wanting to go for, which pulls a lot from 90s nostalgia and 80s nostalgia and movies, books, TV shows that I read. That's a lot where I get my inspiration for the characters and the story and the arcs and how I'm fitting it all together. But I promise it's not all just 80s, 90s nostalgia, or goofiness, or Pierre constantly just railing himself into bad situations because he likes to not min-max, he likes to min-min.
It is lovely, and I will say I do love just the humor in your guys' campaign is lovely and refreshing, and the moment I heard the words Rufus's ramen, or what Rufus Rough Puppy's Ramen Ranch.
Yeah, that was straight up. I was like, you know what, I want to do a parody of, because that's a little bit of it too. Along with the nostalgia comes the parodies. I wanted to do I originally wanted to run this Five Nights at Freddy's parody as a special Halloween game for just my friends, and then it ended up being part of this introductory adventure for the rest of for the whole first season, because I was like, okay, the rest of the campaign, the magnitude of the story is so large, I want to build it up from something super, super tiny. Mm-hmm. So that ended up being a good launching point for the rest of the campaign, and it scared the hell out of them because it sucks when you don't have a class.
Yeah, it's lovely. But I will say also, we were talking about earlier, and it's interesting because you were saying that before you were a DM, you had little to no exposure to D&D in general, right?
Very little to no exposure to the game itself, or gaming in general. I mean, you see it in like TV shows like Dexter's Lab, and like nowadays people have exposure to it.
With Stranger Things,
and I believe there are more than one Big Bang Theory episode that features it. But my main point is, I always saw it as an outsider looking in, and I never got to experience it just because the people that I lived around it wasn't in their catalog of interests. And it just never came up as a chance to participate in that pastime until I got to college, where a couple of my friends in the theater department were going to run a 4th edition campaign and set in Eberron. So I did some reading up on Eberron, and then the Dungeon Master went to basic training, and we never got to play it. So I made it a point when I graduated and moved up here to New York City, where I have like tons of options of hobbies to do, a myriad of things that I couldn't do where I used to live. I made it a point to pursue tabletop gaming, D&D in specifically, and it was perfect timing. The new edition just came out the month before I moved up here, and it came out in August of 2014, and I moved up here in September of 2014. I got the player's handbook. I searched around the city for a friendly local gaming store, found one, and joined a group there, and decided that after my experience, D&D was going to be a huge major hobby for probably the rest of my life. It's just a great tabletop gaming. Has just been a great game. Oh yeah. And since then, I've branched out into like Vampire the Masquerade, and like there was I believe it was a Kickstarter game, Blade of the Iron Throne or something. It was like a Conan based, like sword and sorcery Kickstarter. Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome, and I think that's something that's been a very common aspect, is that 5th edition in particular, since it's come out, has gotten a lot of new people into it, but has also brought a lot of people back into it. Like I know, like I played a decent amount of D&D growing up, especially in college, but then once 5th edition came out and so many more people knew about it, and I knew more people who played, then it was. I dove into it more than I ever had before, so I think that's a common aspect.
Yeah. The exponential growth with this edition is 100% a good thing. I believe they were talking about, I think I read an article or listened to Dragon Talk the other day where they were saying that either, I think it was the PHB or Xanathar's Guide or one of their core books. Recently broke the Amazon bestseller list in terms of it was like number 1 for a while, and now it's like hanging pretty close around number 7 or number 5 worldwide.
Yep, so I think it was Xanathar's. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was big.
Yeah, that's huge.
Oh yeah, it's weird. Just like the fact that something used to be such a niche hobby that even nerds had trouble finding other nerds who played it.
And now you got things like Obsidian Portal and Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds and all sorts of. You have no excuse unless you don't have internet access to not be able to find some way to play this game. We're
in a bit of a golden age. It's kind of wonderful.
Yes.
So yeah, would you like to dive into some questions that some lovely people sent in?
I would. Shoot them at me, Joe. I'm ready to fire back.
Alrighty, we got some really good ones from a bunch of folks.
Perfect.
Our first one is something that a lot of people have actually been interested in one way or another. And they ask, I'm relatively new to DMing and was wondering what is the best way to keep new players interested? And that was asked by Elder Treebeard on Reddit. And I think this is something that a lot of, especially newer DMs, have issues with, especially with new parties. So it's one of those things that lots of people were kind of writing in either that question or a variant of that. Yeah, how do you keep new players interested in the game, not on their phones, not, blanking out?
I think, Joe, one of the things that was really important to me that I learned was the value of session 0, what we call session 0, which is where you and you're probably very familiar with it, where you gather the players around and you sit them down. You tell them you don't have to bring any dice, you don't have to bring any character sheets. You could literally meet with them anywhere. Just sit down, have lunch with them, or brunch, at your favorite restaurant. Just sit with the people who will be involved in the game and talk with them. Ask them what they want in the first. You tell them your idea of what you think. If you're running a homebrew campaign or if you're running a module, tell them what you're wanting, and then ask them what they feel like would keep them engaged. That's the best way to do it, I feel. Mm-hmm. You're gonna have a mix of players who want, I have rough days at work, so what I really want in my gaming sessions is some combat. I just want to roll some dice and feel like I'm like relieving my work stress, out on imaginary monsters that are evil. Mm-hmm. Other people are like, I really like social intrigue, and I really like investigation. And the best way to keep them engaged, just keep them interested, especially new players, is to feed into the instinctual desires that they have when they want to play a game. Right.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree that those are two of the biggest things, especially like you were saying, session 0 is such a big and not underrated, but not emphasized enough part of setting up a successful campaign, simply because a lot of the times you get a group together and you're preparing a game and you don't realize until you genuinely straight up ask them that lots of people want different things from the game, and sometimes if you're catering to one particular thing, there are gimmicks you can do, like to get people back interested in once you've got the game started and they're kind of losing interest, but it's so much easier to lay that groundwork in the beginning. And then, like you said, it's so much easier to see where they want to go and then feed into that, rather than have a necessarily hard plan of what you want to play out.
I 100% agree, and I have two notes to add. When you talk about during the game, while the sessions are going on, it's always good, I feel, to make sure that each player gets at least one, each player's character gets at least one highlight in the session, right? And that could be the fact that there is combat. That could be the highlight for that player, because they built their character to do exactly that. You may need a scene. One other player might not have any interest in that, but directly after that combat, they find their sister that has been their character's driving element to be here, and that whole player's interest has been to find that one person, and they've been asking around town. And so in the combat, when they find in some prison cell in this dungeon there's their sister, they have that scene, right, where afterwards you could have the investigation player figure out why they were in here, what the bandits were doing in this dungeon with this prison cell, etc., and that's their highlight. You can chain these things, and it's really easy to be able to chain them.
Oh, yeah.
That way everyone feels involved, and everyone feels like they are contributing to the game and contributing to each other. I feel is important, because nothing's going to keep new players interested more than having interest not only in the plot, but in the other players' characters.
Absolutely, that is a big thing, and that especially is I think a big part of this question, a big part of why specifically it pertains to new players, is because when you have veteran players, a lot of the times people who've played a bunch, they know how to involve themselves. Like if they're having watch, they know, we can have a scene together, we can make stuff out of this, we can, they know how to make their own moments. But with new players, you really have to set that up for them, because they don't even know that's a possibility a lot of the time.
Exactly. And another reason why it's important to ask what the new players want is because it gives you a gauge, especially if you came to session 0 with a huge lore heavy session planned, or a huge lore-heavy campaign in general, where you're pulling from, let's say, you decided to pull everything. There was the Unearthed Arcana, the Plane Shift, Amonkhet, which I really want to dive into because I love Ancient Egypt. But still, if you came prepped for all of that, and you throw it on your new players without like really easing them into the fact that it's going to be an Ancient Egypt setting, and you didn't ask them what they want, that might be too heavy for them. Whereas if you first ask them what they want, you get an idea as to how much lore or D&D tropey sort of things you can throw at them without overpowering their senses and making it feel like an overwhelming experience. Like, oh, this, like, instead of them being intimidated by all of what D&D is, you want to slowly invite them in, show them a little bit, show them what they want, right? And then show them, oh, well, guess what? Those elves that you really wanted in this game, they also have this whole ancient city thing in this setting called Forgotten Realms, called Mithranor, which was lost. Would you like to explore that a little bit? And then you just feed them little bits. Yeah. And then you build their interest up that way. And then you can start getting them more involved in heavier lore. Like, let's say, 3 sessions down the line, they didn't know, but you actually did have Mithranor built in there, or you decide to throw it in there to it's like a Chekhov's gun sort of scenario in that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right, awesome. I think that answers the question pretty thoroughly. I think overall the best way to keep new players involved and interested is to set the groundwork for it. Overall is to prepare for it rather than try to retroactively reel them back in. Right. All right. For our next question, we have one that's also involving new players, but it's actually from the player's perspective. They're asking, what's the best way for a new player to make the DM's life easier? And that's from I'm bored at work. So if a new player is coming in, they don't know the game, what are some things they can do to kind of ease the DM's burden at the beginning?
Okay. So I'm going to go off of that little phrase you added there, if they don't know the game. So we're going to assume that they are, let's say, borrowing someone's book to create their character. They don't own it. They literally just did they've picked the easiest character build that it suggests. They've picked a few, they went with an easy fighter thing because they didn't want to mess with spells. But let's just say, brand new, sit down at the table. All they have in front of them is their character sheet, and there's a pool of dice that they're pulling from. What's the best way to make a new player to make the DM's life easier? At least, I feel like learn, and you don't have to know the whole rulebook. Do not try and memorize that lengthy, large tome, and I'm glad it's lengthy and large because, but don't try and memorize it. At least try and memorize, or at least know the gist of what your character is capable of doing. Mm-hmm. Because it's like learning your lines and learning your blocking. If D&D's improv, so it's a weird translation, but if you know where you want your character to, what you want your character to do, how they can do it, or at least what they're capable of doing, it's going to make jumping into the game easier. It's going to help the DM's job. It's going to help their job easier because they can keep the game flowing if they look at you and ask, what do you want to do? And you know that you can charm person, and there's a person you want to talk to, but they're being a little bit iffy towards you. Say, oh, I cast charm person, instead of you looking at your sheet being like, oh no, wait, there was something my character could do, but I just wrote it down and I don't really know what it does. And I don't know if my character is going to be good at social stuff anymore because I don't know what these 6 stats represent. There's just make sure you get the basics of what your character is capable of doing, and then trust that the rest of the party can be a helping hand. Because if you're a new player and you're not sitting at a table with new players, there are going to be some veterans there, let's assume, in this hypothetical. They're going to be able to help you. And they're also going to be able to help you with rules. Because I feel like D&D is a game that's best played with cooperation. In my own personal gauge of how to make D&D fun. Other people have different gauges. That's just me.
Absolutely. And yeah, no, I agree 100%. That is one thing. If you are a person at the table and you've played before and you know the game and there is a new player, that is the very least you can do is help the new guy when they're like, what do I add to this when I do this? But that is the best starting point, is if you know your race and you know your class and you know the basics about skills and stats, you are 100% ready to go. No one's expecting you to be perfect from the base. You can always ask questions, and any DM should be happy to answer the questions. In fact, I almost kind of disagree a little bit with the phrasing of the question in the beginning, just because I don't think it is necessarily the job of a new player to try and make the DM's life be easier at the very beginning.
That's true. I think it's just. I agree with that.
I think it's important that they make an effort to learn the game to the point where they are no longer asking questions that slow down the gameplay for everyone else. I think that's the main thing.
I agree. I think it's the job of a new player of a new player who's new to the game whatsoever, to find what they think is fun about the game, especially in the first time they play. Because if they one of my I had someone who was new sit down at a table that I was playing at. I wasn't DMing. And my friend, one of my best friends, who was at the very first table I ever played at, Mark, he was at this table as well. And this new player came in, jumped in. It was like a Wednesday night encounters deal. And they asked us, well, how do you win at D&D? And I thought it was a very interesting question. And Mark had an answer, and I knew Mark had an answer because he's a vet. He's a pro. And he said, imagine that you buy a ticket to go see a movie. And you go and you see the movie. Congratulations, you won the movie. That's just like how D&D is. If you sit and play, you're winning. There is no like losing unless you just start to just feel there's no I don't want to say there's no losing, but there's if you're not having fun, there's ways to maybe you can step back a bit and say, okay, why am I not having fun here? Is this just not my flavor? Is this just just too combat heavy? I think that's it's part of the learning process.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the important thing about one of the wonderful things about D&D is the win condition is having fun.
Exactly.
As long as you're having fun, you're winning. That's all that matters. Like that, and even that's why so many people get into disagreements about how strict to follow the rules and how strict because some people have a lot of fun following the rules to the T, and a lot of people have fun being a bit more loosey goosey, and that's another reason why it's important to talk to your party and know what kind of game they're looking for, because if they're having fun in different ways, it's important to make sure that you cater to those different kinds of fun. But
100% agree. Yes.
Yeah, no, but for a new player, I 100% agree. The way you win and the way you make the DM's life easier is by enjoying D&D and finding what you like about it and diving in.
Exactly. One quick mechanical pro tip, though. I'm bored at work. If you don't already know this, if you're in combat, roll your d20 and your damage dice at the same time, even if you miss, because it's just going to make adding it up and making that turn go faster. I promise you. And it will impress the veteran players.
Absolutely. And also I will say, which is just a general rule I give to everyone, take notes, because it's always nice to have. It's always good to have notes.
I can't tell you how many times they've been, and I cut all this out, but how many times they've been like, when we talked to that one person And sometimes I'm like, which one person are you talking about?
The one
which
with
voice
the
are
mustache,
you wanting to...
like
Yes, exactly. Oh God, yes. Take notes.
Notes are good. But yeah, no. Glad we could take care of that one. Our next question is going to be another one. This one I'm particularly interested in because you've done a lot of world building in the Spellcast. And I was wondering, Thacking Hell from Reddit.
I love that name.
It's such a good name. They were wondering, what are the best ways to include players in world building? So to get them involved not only in being a part of the world, but maybe kind of adding to it.
I'm going to pull Mark again for this because
Mark sounds like a good guy. Mark sounds like he knows a lot.
He's a fantastic friend and a fantastic gamer. He ran a game for us where he wanted to incorporate this world building system called Microscope into with us before we even started session, like the first session. Like that was our session 0, was using this Microscope system. And if you're not familiar with it, it involves a set of index cards and lining things up chronologically, where the very first thing you do is you pass around an index card and everyone writes something that they do not want in the game. So for example, if you've been doing tons of like undead zombie stuff and you're just tired of it and you don't want to see that or vampires or anything, you can write down no undead and no one can veto it. And so after you're done, everyone reads out what's vetoed, and then everyone collectively takes turns going around the table creating like a location, like 3 different time periods, like the past, the present, the future, or and people decide where they want the game to take place. This is how we did it. It's more used for like writing and other storytelling aspects, but you can, within the 3 different time periods, you can create locations, what happens to those locations. It could be on any scale you want it to be, from only one city to an entire solar system, the magnitude of like that timeline and what that would all involve and events taking place there. But it's, let me see, it should be, I think it's available as a PDF or something, but it's called Microscope, and
awesome.
it's a wonderful world building system.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. I love the idea of the round robin, like, because I feel like that would also really help sort out what kind of game you're going to want to play in terms of, like, I imagine that it's like someone could write down, or say, like, you could write out certain elements like political intrigue or...
exactly.
Heavy combat or heavy socialization. Like, it'd be a good round-robin way of doing it. I'd be very interested in seeing that PDF.
And it's by, let me see, it's by Lame Mage Productions, and it's Lame Mage, LAMEMAGE.com/microscope. And it's I'm just gonna read the quick. It's a fractal role-playing game of epic histories, but you can change the magnitude of it as you want, like I said. But for example, one of the things I wrote on the card, and I don't know why I wrote it down, it's just something that came to my mind, was mud obelisks. I don't know why, it just was in my head, and we put it in there, and there were mud obelisks that popped up around this little town, and they were I felt as a player like I contributed something important, as did everyone else when their individual things that they wrote on the card came up. They felt engaged, and we had the best time, because sometimes everyone pointed at me when those mud obelisks came up, and we found out they were not good, and they were like, you did this, and I'm like, I'm not sorry, but I'm sorry. And it was a fun time. It was a good time. I enjoyed that.
That is wonderful. Yeah. Absolutely. I do think one thing that I have done in the past that I really enjoy, it's not necessarily, it's in the same vein that it helps them feel like they're part of the world, is like you can hand out cards, and sometimes you can do it randomly, that just at the beginning of session 0 or session 1 you hand them cards, no other players see them, but it's just little parts about the world that their characters would know, like little pieces of lore. So, and it could be entirely random, but it just means that when, say, you come to this weird statue that shows this dwarven king but with 2 heads, normally you would have to explain that or do a history check or something like that. But if one of them had a card that told them the little factoid about, the weird dwarf idol thing, they're all of a sudden like, I know about this. My character knows about this. In world, I have knowledge, and that's worked before to kind of do in the same vein of they feel like they're really contributing knowledge about the world. So I think we're going to take a quick break from questions to do our fun little game that we've invented in the middle.
Ooh. Yes, I heard the first episode. I am excited. I love this little fun little game.
It was fun, and we didn't end up actually getting any short stories or bios, which is totally fine because, first episode.
Totally
but
cool.
We did get some ridiculously awesome fan art on Twitter by Travis Mattingly. Go check it out. It was retweeted. It's freaking wonderful. I love it.
Oh yeah, the goblin anthropologist. Is that right?
Goblin anthropologist druid who
fantastic.
Hugs full body contact. I love that character.
The flower tiara was on point. Just the best little addition. I loved it.
It made me so happy, and I really hope that we keep getting stuff like this and we keep making interesting characters because I just love it so much. So yeah, we're ready to do that. Do you by any chance have any D20s ready, or we can always do it online as well?
I have a whole tray, Joe.
Good.
I am always ready.
You make me happy. All right. So as I said last time, I have created some random character generation tables, and we're going to do 4 rolls. The first roll is for race, the second one is for profession, the third one is for background, and the last one is for a character quirk. We're going to create 3 characters and choose our favorite child at the end, and then put it out there into the world and see what fan art or stories or just whatever comes our way from this lovely character.
Yes. All right. This first roll.
Let it begin.
We got a 16 there, Joe.
A 16. We're starting out with a Kenku.
Ooh, I love Kenku. Ooh, yes.
This is good. This is very good.
We got a 15.
Tinkerer. This is a good start. Kenku Tinkerer.
Yes. Oh, that's so fitting, though. That
is the one thing. But hopefully we can mess it up.
We got an 8.
8 is Hermit. Okay, so
yeah, this is following a lot. Yeah.
This is now a very generic character.
This is very. I'm sorry. Let's see if the twerk, if the quirk can fix it.
Hopefully, they are all interesting.
A natural 20.
Well, natural 20 is nudist.
No, a plucked Kenku Tinkerer who's a hermit. Yes, just no feathers.
Oh my god! Just
yes.
Oh my god! I was wondering when that nat 20 was going to come.
I'm dying. I love them. They sound so fantastic.
The best part of this is 100%. I'm going to use this character someday. So one of my parties is gonna walk up to an abandoned hunt and find a naked Kenku working on some little trinket. Oh, good.
Oh, that took a turn for the greatest.
Indeed. We have to keep going though. We have to get 2 more.
Yes. Got it. 8.
8 is half orc.
3.
3 is rogue. All right.
Okay. 10.
Noble. Oh.
This is interesting. And 16.
16 is affectionate towards farm animals.
Huh.
I kind of.
All right.
I like this one. It's not quite as outlandish, but I like. He has a charm. He has a certain charm. He or they or she. With any gender that they identify with. I purposely don't want to assign a gender or a name just to like keep it as open as possible to people's
I 100%
interpretations.
agree. I 100% agree.
But half-orc noble rogue who has an affection for farm animals. All right.
They sound like a charming person. I love it.
Indeed. All right, let's go for a third one. Big money, no Emmys.
Number 2.
2 is half-elf.
Ooh. A 9.
9, cleric. Okay.
All right. 5.
5 is folk hero. Okay.
Ooh, okay. And then 17.
17 refers to self in the third person. Yeah, that one isn't terribly. I think we know which one we're gonna go with at this.
I think we know which one we're gonna go.
We
with
all
at this
know.
Point.
We all
the
know.
Kenku.
The
It's
Kenku. The nudist Kenku who has been plucked. I can't even begin to think of a backstory as to why there is a plucked Kenku.
I can't either.
But it makes me happy regardless.
It's so good.
So yeah, if the idea of a nude Kenku working as a hermit on some tinkering inspires you to write something, draw something, God, I don't want to say cosplay because that could be bad. But
It's so bad. Don't say that.
But if it inspires you in any way, send your submissions to deardm.submit@gmail.com or to our Twitter @deardmpodcast. And we will be overjoyed to see your submissions. Before we end that segment, I did want to send a shout out to Elder Treebeard, who we actually answered a question for earlier, because they gave me the initial little seed of inspiration saying we should do a segment with weird characters, and that has made it a very fun part of the show, and I wanted to thank them for that.
I love that segment. That was a genius idea.
It's fun. It is very fun. And like I said, I'm going to use these characters.
Yes.
It's going to be in a campaign. All right, so let's dig back into some questions. We have a couple more. This one is from Sonic Peanut. And they say, as a lot of people are, they say they're new to being a dungeon master, and they were wondering, how do you transition smoothly between missions and key events? So I think essentially when you have like a large plot point or a important event, something to that effect, how do you then transition into the rest of the game?
Okay. So what you don't want to give the players anything that is just an answer at the end of like a big bag boss fight. You don't want to just that's just it. There are no more questions. We did the thing. It's over. What do we do now? You want to give them an answer that also contains within it a question. That way, the players can begin to pursue the answer to the next question, and then so on and so forth, and so on. So imagine you have a bathtub, okay, and you have a bunch of water in it, and that bathtub drains into the next bathtub. So it's just bathtubs all the way down. Your players get the satisfaction of draining the water out of the first one. But now they realize that some of their water went into this new bathtub. And now they have to go and drain that bathtub. And at the end, when you get to the final bathtub, you have water from every single other bathtub that you drained before. And when the players finally dump that bathtub over onto the ground and watch all the water go away, they will feel super satisfied after having solved every key event and thing that you've done before. If you just end it with, okay, this is the Mind Flayer, you kill the Mind Flayer. The town has no more problems. And that was it. You solved everything that the Mind Flayer was doing. And your players want to keep playing their characters. But now you have to come up with something new that gets them interested in continuing the campaign.
Absolutely.
So it's a matter. It's very basic storytelling. You don't end the story until you want to end the story.
Absolutely, and I will say
just
that
let everything flow.
I do love the bathtub analogy. That is a very apt and unhygienic analogy.
It is very apt and unhygienic.
But
when do D&D players ever take baths or D&D characters ever take baths anyway? I nearly screwed that up.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
When do D&D characters ever take baths anyway? It's just like in movies. You never have bathroom scenes in movies.
It's because in the alternate universe, no one has bladders. It's just known fact. I will say I am a huge fan of. I do think it's important to keep the momentum going, but I think maybe not at the end of every arc or at the end of every boss battle, but maybe every other one. Or I think there is a lot of value in downtime.
I agree. I 100% agree with downtime as well.
Because it's so important. Like sometimes I've been in sessions before where we beat the big bad, but immediately we're on to the next threat, and then we're doing thing after thing after thing, and then we realize we've got so much gold, but we've never spent any of it because we're never just in a town. Or even things like, for instance, anyone who's played with me knows I am a absolute sucker for anything that has to do with base building or town building or anything like that. So
castle construction.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that too.
If you ever get me to a point where that's an option, like and again, it's not something you want to do. You want to keep the momentum going for the most part. But if you reach a point where you've come to a mostly satisfying, when you've drained a particularly large bathtub, and the next one is a little far away.
You just want to dry off for a second, go eat, and then come back.
Then have a sandwich, bring the sandwich to the bathtub, enjoy them both at the same time.
Exactly.
This metaphor may be getting away.
It's too much. God.
But it's lovely. But yeah, no, I do enjoy downtime, especially I do think once you've reached a certain high level, maybe like 9th level, I do like time skips, like say, okay, a year transpires, what do you want to do in that year? Because it allows characters to think, well, technically my druid has wall of stone, I could make a fort if I wanted to. Or my character could start a business because he has really high charisma. It lets them think of what their characters can do if they have more resources and time.
I agree. I agree.
But I also I think that is the balance. I think you need to find times to stop, have a shopping episode, do that. Let the barbarian go to the brothel, do everything you want to do everything you want to do, but then have reason to move back into the fray.
100%.
But yeah, I do think that transitioning process can be a little bit tricky sometimes. But like you said, the bathtub is brilliant, and I think just leaving some questions along with that big answer is a big part of moving
and
to
even
the next
if it's something as innocuous as an item of unknown origin that you, the DM, knows is going to transition into there, that all they have to do is during the downtime, it takes them very little effort to just go up to like a scriptorium and just look through a scroll of a list of artifacts and things and figure out what it is. And that can lead into it as part of downtime.
Absolutely. I do think items are a great way to get, because especially if it's a magical item, the first thing you're going to do is, all right, we got to go into town and get someone to identify this. And then
exactly. Yeah,
no, that is a very, very good tool. And yeah.
But there are myriads of ways you can do. You can do and items is information, a name, a myriad of ways you can MacGuffins.
It's just that hook. That hook that will pull them to the next thing is important. Yeah. But I love that was a brilliant answer. I love the bathtub analogy. I'm probably going to steal that word for word many times in the future.
Feel free.
But yeah, our last question for the evening is a little bit longer, but it's a very good one. Because it's something that I think a lot of people kind of deal with. And they say, I am a new DM, and not only that, I only recently started playing D&D with a full-out party and properly scheduled session dates and all that. I'm very new. I have, however, been involved in the D&D world for around 3 years, helping friends create campaigns, or at least listening in, hearing how everything worked, etc. Basically, my party went to hell within the first 2.5 hours of my first session. They're divided with definite tension between two characters, and we'd only just begun. how do I get them back together? Or at least, how do I keep them together? As a new DM, I heard my DM say that he's currently trying to keep our party together, full of very independent characters, together mainly by loot. I don't want that to happen with mine. How can I light a fire of companionship and teamwork amidst my group? And that's from Igno the Bard.
Okay. So, Igno. This little bit of advice for the next time, and then we'll get to how to solve your current situation, or at least a way to. There are many ways to. When you set up your session 0, like what we talked about way earlier, you want to also address how you want the characters in the party to treat each other. You need to say, if you want companionship and teamwork, you need to address that from the very beginning before they go and create their characters. Because otherwise, the players won't have that foundation to say, okay, I'm going to be getting into a game where it will be more beneficial for me as a player, and I will have more fun as a player if my character cooperates. Whereas, if you tell them, okay, this game is going to be backstabbing, and it's going to be PvP, and it's going to be stealing and underworld, and like using minions to go fight this player's forces, unless you tell them something like that, you just need to be clear as to how you want the nature of the player's interaction to be. Now, for your situation here, the number one thing I'm going to say is talk to your players.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try and do anything behind the scenes. Don't try and like railroad them into having some connection with each other. Take them aside one at a time and talk to them. Explain what you want, figure out what they want, and just talk to them about it and try and reach an understanding, a compromise. And if you're not making headway with one of them, sit them both down outside of the rest of the party. The rest of the party doesn't need to participate in this, because the last thing you want to do is bring up this situation at the table. That is the worst thing you can do. Always bring it. Say, if it comes up again, take a break. Say, okay, everyone, let's take like a 15-minute break. Bring that one of the characters, talk to them, explain what you kind of wanted, and then explain that, maybe you should have made this clear in the beginning, but that's beside the point. Then talk to the other player, and then sit them both down and explain what you've said to one another, and then figure it out from there. Don't try and figure it out as a method of gameplay, trying to figure out how everyone can have fun. Because I'll tell you what, if you go to a friend's game night, all right, let's say this. If you go to a friend's game night and they didn't tell you what all types of games they were going to play, and you thought, oh, you know what, I know they have Mysterium, which is a very cooperative game, and it's, or I know they have Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is also a very cooperative game, and you show up and they already decided to play Monopoly, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, no, that's...
So it is very key to organize those aspects before the game begins as well. Because the last thing you want is everyone to be cooperating and one party member to show up with a rogue that's just going to try and steal from everyone, and just making everything life hard. Just in terms of the game. Absolutely.
And it's one of those things where... like you said, so much of it is, like with a bunch of things we talked about today, so much of it is setting it up and not trying to retroactively fix it. But
exactly,
when something like that does arrive, like you said, your players are human beings. You don't have to be like the mastermind behind the scenes pulling the strings. You can be like, hey, Todd, this isn't fun when you do this shit. Could we, and that's one of the things you can speak in plain terms. Like there's been a couple different sessions where I was like, all right, basic rule for character creation: your character has to have a reason to be cooperating with other people. They don't necessarily have to be happy about it or be completely happy sunny about it, but they have to have a reason to do it, because otherwise it's not a cooperative game.
Right.
Which feels weird for a lot of new DMs. A lot of new DMs feel like they don't necessarily have the authority, or they can just say, things need to be a certain way. But the fact of the matter is, once you have enough players who want to play the lone wolf character who just screws over everyone and doesn't interact with, the rest of the party, you realize that it's kind of part of the social contract of D&D is... Mm-hmm. It's not is almost a certain level of metagamingness. Like it's like when, it's not metagaming in the sense that you're trying to gain an advantage. It's just acknowledging that, look, D&D is still a game. We still want to have fun, and in order to do that, we have to take into account how we're affecting the other players. Not just, I'm going to play my character because he's a lone wolf and he hates everyone.
Right.
But yeah, no, like so much we've talked about it. It is very much a talk to your players at the beginning and figure out what you all want and tell them what you want. That's another big thing. Make sure you're very clear with what kind of things you're not okay with.
Mm-hmm. And if you talk to one of the players and they say, I really like this character, I understand that they are being antagonistic with the party, I like the party, me as the player likes the party, but this character, I feel like, has to live out their arc. If they say that they want to continue playing this character until, it becomes clear that the party can't handle it, you tell them, okay, that's fine. I need you to make the decision for me when that is going to happen, because the minute that it's going to turn into a hostile, this character can't work with this party anymore, I need you to have a new character ready that will be more along the lines of what's going to work with the party, and then hand that to me, because that gives you an opportunity to turn their character, which they worked hard on, into a new enemy or into a new villain, which means that they didn't waste their time making this character. They're gonna feel good now that they're also going way back involved in the world building of what you're doing, right? And this is the most important part. The players are not fighting each other's characters, because when he hands you his character and you turn it into an NPC, it just becomes another monster.
Absolutely.
And you continue to be able to do your job as an arbitrator of the game and of everyone else's fun. And that, at the end of the day, is what's important.
Absolutely. And I think that is as good a note as any to say that I think that's all the questions we're going to ask for or answer today. It was a bucket load of fun.
Joe, always fun talking to you, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. It's been so much fun. I actually, in the future, once we get some more submissions going, I do want to end episodes with some game tales from your guys', all you listeners, stories about what happened at your table, if it was something funny or interesting. So feel free to submit those as well, but feel free to take it as long as you want to answer, because I'm springing this on you right now. But I was wondering, Adam, do you have a favorite game tale that you want to leave us before we call it a day?
Oh, favorite game tale. Oh my lord. Let me.
You can take as long as you need. I did not tell you about this beforehand.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. My I'm trying to think. How PG do you want this? It's not going to be super horrible.
As long as it doesn't have graphic descriptions.
Oh, we're fine. We're fine. Okay,
yeah.
Good. Okay, so I was playing. My first character I ever played was a paladin, and his flaw was he liked to partake in worldly pleasures. And we were playing in the Horde of the Dragon Queen module. And we were in the caravan. For the players who haven't played it, there's a caravan that takes you from Baldur's Gate to heading towards Waterdeep. It's a long trip, and there's a lot of encounters along the way. Well, we encountered a couple of very attractive twins, and my paladin was interested in these twins, and so flaw kicks in. my paladin invites them to his caravan, and in the middle of the night, everyone else hears a bash, clang, pound, thud, and they open the door, and I am being dragged out of my caravan by two doppelgangers, knocked out, unconscious, wearing only a tunic, and that was the birth, Joe, of the doppelbanger.
Yes, that is a world-class pun. That makes me so happy. Thank you so much for coming on. That's gonna do it for us here today on Dear DM. If you want to hear your question on the show, please submit it either to the Twitter at Dear DM Podcast or to deardm.submit@gmail.com. We would love to get as many as possible, because the more questions you guys send, the more episodes we can get recorded ASAP. And also, we are recording on a regular schedule now, so episodes will be coming out every other Tuesday, starting, this should be going up on, I believe, January 2nd, 2018. So, yeah, we're going to be getting out, going to have lots of different guests. Also, one last thing, Adam, where can folks find your work? Where can they find the Spellcast and some of your acting stuff?
Well, they can find the Spellcast at thespellcast.podbean.com. They can also find us on iTunes as the Spellcast D&D and any other podcast provider that you may know. We're on Twitter at the Spellcast, and also on Instagram at the Spellcast.
Ooh, I didn't know you had an Instagram. I have to check that out.
Yeah. And if you want to see some of the recent acting work that I did, you should watch the season premiere of the third season premiere of Mr. Robot. There is a certain hacker in a hacker space that is yelling his lungs off, and that's me. So there you go.
Awesome.
Woohoo.
I'm looking forward to it. If you want, I would love to have you back sometime, Adam. It's been
I would love
wonderful.
to come back, Joe. I'd love to come back.
It's been absolutely lovely having you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I still don't have a goddamn tagline to end the show with, so
You'll find one. Search deep within yourself.
someday.
Or like, I don't know, Scribblenauts lexicon, random word generator. I don't know. Figure it out.
Or maybe
it'll work.
I'll just steal a different catchphrase from different hosts each episode.
Yes.
All right.
Love it.
On that note, good night and good luck. I will see you next time. Thank you, Adam.
Good night to you, Joe.